That says 25 degrees right there. That's legit winter fishing. And everybody else is a lot smarter than us because there ain't nobody at this boat ramp. It's freezing, but this is my day off, so I'm going fishing, dude. Yeah, that's all ice. You don't hear much about worm fishing during the winter. You know, Texas rig with a ribbon tail, and there's a very good reason. It just doesn't cut it, dude. It doesn't fit that winter template. But I'm a worm guy. I'm from Florida. I love throwing soft plastics. A lot of times with soft plastic fishing, it's more about reimagining the technique for the season and the time that you're in. So what we're gonna do in this video is I'm gonna show you kind of a unique way to fish soft plastics that fits that winter template, that'll actually allow you to catch some fish on your standard worm. And we're gonna play with some interesting plastics. Obviously the stick bait, you know, classic killer, but you need to make like a little bit of a tweak to it, which I'm gonna show you. And then some of the new kind of interesting stuff, a Bellows Gill, you know, from Geecrack, those unique kind of creature baits, a fluke or a minnow style bait, you know, classic bait, perfect mimic for like forage and shad. And then also some JDM baits, and they're kind of creature baits, but they're sort of their own category. They're hyper finesse, hyper weird, kind of shrimpy looking weird creature craw style baits. But I'm going to show you how to rig them up and how to fish them so that you can be successful actually catching fish on soft plastics during these cold water months. So hit that like and subscribe button. Bog of corn's back there somewhere hanging out. We're going to go pull on some and I'm going to show you this technique.
Oh boys, we got the right one. That's a great freaking big one. What's funny is that fish came off a piece of brush and it's not even the fish that we saw following the bait. That's a nice three and change, dude. Just smoked that Nico rig. And what's crazy is like you swim this thing. You don't really fish it on the bottom. Absolutely crushed it. What a spot, dude. Look at that thing. There's a couple ways I'm doing this one rig. The basic though is I got a Wacky Rig tool from Monster Bass, and then these are 16th ounce nail weights, tungsten. Because we're using smaller baits like this 4-inch Senko style bait, and then some of those smaller creature baits, you have to use tungsten, otherwise the weight gets big. So I'm gonna insert that nice and straight. And I'm gonna grab that Wacky Rig tool. I also use the VMC little wraps, just something so that the worm lasts longer. And then I'm gonna go ahead and slide it in. I'm gonna look for the worm sack on this, and I'm gonna slide one of these. Now, the trick is on the stick baits, I'm using that smoke color. Probably doesn't matter, but I want a clear band instead of the green pumpkin, and then I'll roll that right up to the worm sack right there, so it's kind of right in the middle. And then I'm not even really hooking the bait. The one thing you want to make sure though is that your hook point is up towards the tail, because the bait's basically going to sink like this, and I want that hook point up so that when I actually set the hook, it's up. If it's down, you're gonna miss fish, dude. So you want it up, ready to set the hook. Plus it's slightly weedless, not very weedless, but slightly weedless when you run it parallel with the bait like that. Got you. That's a freaking good one too. But I'm stuck in a very uncomfortable place. Oh man. Now I gotta figure out what I'm gonna do, Boxer. You gonna dump your water on my knee? I think that might be another 3-pounder. Come here. Oh, he's gonna be awfully close. Oh man, this is cool. This is beautiful too. This is what's so cool about this lake. There's literally a waterfall right there, and you're catching freaking chunkalunkusin right there. That's so cool. How about it, boys?
Let's break this down. And when it comes down to it, it has a real simple name. it's swimming a nico rig. It's something that I learned from my buddy Tim at Hammond's Fishing Center on Lake Lanier. They do it on long points and scattered brush. They'll just cast that thing way out there and slowly swim it back to the boat. So I was actually out with swimsuit girl, dude. Super cold day. We actually had a little snow on the ground yet. It was terrible, dude. Terrible conditions. Couldn't get indeed a Kitech. Couldn't get indeed a blade bait, drop shot, even like the jig and minnow, dude. A lot of fish under like these docks that are all around me, and I could see them and they wouldn't close. So I started thinking, I'm like, why can't I use that swimming nico rig technique as kind of like a power finesse technique to fish around these docks and around this isolated cover and around these bluff walls and things like that? Bro, they started absolutely crushing it. Like it was crazy. It was mind-blowing. And there's a lot of different ways you can do this. One of my favorite ways to do this is actually with a kind of a cool stick bait that my buddy Jacob Wall told me about. It's Daiwa. It's actually made by Yamamoto. It's a 4-inch stick bait. It's got that little fat tail on the back. You know, the biggest forage focus this time of year is shad and bait. That's why I like to go with that smoke style color. It's not that you have to, but especially with the stick bait, I think that minnow kind of representation or that shad representation is absolutely key to differentiating yourself. Another one that I like to do this with is your classic, and I don't think enough guys actually do this, is Wacky Rigging a fluke. This is a zoom winged fluke. You get kind of a unique action with the wings. You get like a rolling as well as that U kind of bending action. You can do it with just about any fluke though. I'd recommend something downsized. All of these baits are downsized, and the whole trick is there's a million minnows out there right now for forward facing, so you have a lot to pick from. Now one of the fun ones, and it's been like super popular, is this guy right here, and this is the Bellows Gill. So it's a really unique creature bait with all these ribs on it. This is the smaller, I think it's the 2.8 or the 2.5 version, but super unique. Got that little tiny tail that has kind of a cool swimming action. And they actually, Geecrack just came out with a way to actually nico rig this. And what you do is you take some of these nico hack little kind of like staple looking things. They're like little black tees. You run it through the bottom of the bait, and then you thread your hook right through. So it has this little clevis on there, and you thread your hook right through that. Now, the only downside to this guy, as well as the one I'm about to show you, is it's a lot more plastic, right? It's a bigger creature style bait. There's a lot more body space too, so there's a lot more resistance. You're gonna have to play with weights. In general, I'm using like a 16th ounce nail weight on my stick baits and a majority of these, but if you're trying to get it down, and especially with swimming it, if you're trying to keep it down at a certain depth, you might have to go out to a 3/32 or even possibly an 1/8. This is actually a raid bait. JDM stuff. It's called the 2-way, and you can see it already has the hook slot right in the middle. It's kind of a weird halegramite kind of creaturey. It's just a super funky bait, but it's super unique, and it's something that they haven't seen. And once again, it's downsized. There's no like ribbon tails or kicking action kind of appendages on it. It's all just little kind of, I don't know what you'd even call them, little strangly whiskers that just vibrate and shake in the water. And that's what I'm looking for. I don't want any swimming style tails on any of these. So one of the cool mods that you can do, and what you'll need is these right here. These are power spinners. It's a Keith Pochet power spinner. And I think a lot of you guys are already doing this with like your worms and things like that during the summer. But I don't know how many of you guys are actually doing it with a wacky rig. So a lot of times when I'm fishing that Daiwa stick bait, I'll have fish short strike, right? It's cold water, they're super tentative, and they'll actually rip the tail off my stick bait, my expensive. These are like $7.99 a pack, dude. They're expensive. So the tail's gone, and I'm pissed. So what I do is I kind of stash those and keep them to the side. And those power spinners are basically a little kind of willow leaf blade, and then it has a little screw lock on it. And what you can do, and I've showed you guys this with a Kitech, is you take it and you screw it into the tail, just like that. And what it does is it actually becomes a new swimming style tail, but instead of swimming, it's like a bunch of flash. It still provides a little bit of resistance, but when you put your little 16th ounce weight in the bottom there and wacky rig this thing, it points down like this, and it does this cool kind of like spinning and flashing kind of swimming action where it kind of like jumps up, the blade spins real quick, and then it flutters, and it jumps up, and it continually does that as you're kind of like swimming it back. It's a cool little mod. Once again though, it does create a little more resistance. Make sure you're using the Keith Pochet one though. The other ones that I've gotten off the Tackle Warehouse, they have a much bigger blade
blade, and it's too much resistance. Unless that's what you're looking for and you got some dirty water and you need more flash, I like this little tiny joker. It has just enough kind of dangle and flash to it to not inhibit my cast, but still give me that sort of, I don't know, you get a windy day and you want the bait to have a little more report, a little more flash. But those are kind of my cool hacks. You can almost take any of these little like JDM Creature Baits and any of these like minnow fluke baits and do the same thing. One of the keys though, other than the Creature Baits, I'd highly recommend sticking with those smoke and those shad colors. That's the biggest key when you're doing this soft plastic worm fishing this time of year. It needs to be something that looks like a shad. So how are we actually fishing this thing? Well, I got a big dock right in front of me. It's Barney's Bluff. So you can see there's a shade line right here. That's the first thing I'm focused on. I'm just throwing it around those shade lines, inside those shade lines. And I don't know if they're using the shade as an ambush point or if it's because those black floaties retain heat, but they're kind of suspended maybe 5 to 10 foot down below these docks. And the biggest trick with this, you can see I'm shaking my rod and reeling. This is really, it's a swimming technique. I'm swimming this thing. I'm almost shaking it like forward-facing minnow kind of thing, where I'm getting it down, letting it sink. I'll use my active target a little to kind of creep and cheat and sneak and like look under the docks. And then what I'll do is sink this down to the depth that I think is correct. And I'm reeling and using extremely soft shake. Reminds me a lot of that Alabama shake, that swim jig technique. But the trick is I'm using such a soft rod. This is a 7.4 medium light HFX spinning rod. It's not really shaking the bait much. I want more reel action than actual shake action. And then in between these docks, or sometimes I'll just fish them straight up, is bluff walls, right? So there's steep breaks right there, and I'll do the same thing, and I'm basically kind of swimming or gliding this bait down like you do like with a Kitech or something like that, down these breaks and these vertical kind of structures. There's also brush mixed in, and I'll target that with my active target too, and once again throw this thing out there and sink it down. It reminds me a lot, like we're fishing it a lot like we would a minnow. It's just more versatile, and they're seeing, everybody's throwing a damn minnow, dude, so they're seeing a million of those, so it's a little different presentation, but you're still mimicking like bait, shad, things along those lines, and you're still presenting in that sort of middle water column where those fish are suspended during the winter. It feels decent. Oh yeah, look at that fat Goliath. Now that was an example off the rock. There's a big chunk rock right there. I don't think I can boat flip this one. And she just came up off that chunk rock. These fish will warm up on those rocks. Come here. God, they're so fat, dude. It's freaking nuts. And they just, dude, they hook themselves. You let the rod kind of do the work. You let Bog lick the fish. Like that chucker was not coming off. Holy crap. How'd you do that? You let the rod do the work, and you get yourself some of those. It's kind of crazy. You guys see that? That is a sunken boat. That's kind of freaking nuts right there. What did we do here? Bro, is that a stripe or a freaking spot? That's a great big spotted bass. Holy crap-a-moly, Batman. Holy crap-a-moly. Right off the sunken dock, dude. God, that's a stud. Come here. Look at that thing. I thought it was a striped bass. Holy crap. That's a freaking, that's why you come out when it's bitter cold, dude. That right there, what a beautiful backdrop too. Giant freaking rock bluff. Bros and broettes. That's what you come out for, dude. That's a 3.5 pound spot. That's a freaking donk for this lake, dude. That's exactly what you need to be catching to win tournaments. Let's get her back. God, such a long, beautiful fish. That is so cool. All right, boys, me and Mr. Boggercorn, we're gonna wrap this thing up, dude. Absolutely epic day. It's a cool technique.
It falls into that kind of power finesse category, and I love fishing that way. You're getting a reaction, but you're using kind of these finesse, unique kind of fun lures like that Geecrack or, you know, the JDM stuff. And it's fun, dude, and it gets bites on a soft plastic, which is one of the things that I think it's most difficult, unless it's like a jig and minnow, to get bit on. It's tough to get bit on a worm during the winter, and this is one of the alternatives, one of the reimaginings that you can implement to get some bites. Hope you guys enjoyed this. So if you got any comments or any questions or anything to add to this technique, drop it down in the comments box. I'll put links to like that Monster Bass Wacky tool, all the stuff that we talked about baits-wise in that at Tackle Warehouse down in the description box for you guys to check out if you want to try this out. And I got one favor to ask. We're almost to 100K. If you got a buddy, if you got a friend who likes fishing, or maybe they don't like fishing and you just want to troll them, tell them to subscribe to the channel. I don't care if we make 100K for 24 hours or we drop back below, but one of my life goals is to finally hit that 100K. It's been like 13, 14 years doing this YouTube deal on the side. It's been a blast. I absolutely love it. And one of my deals is I really want to hit 100K. I just want to know that we got to that level, and then whatever happens after that is butter and cheese, right? But hope you guys enjoyed this video. Tell a friend about the channel. We'll see you next time back out on the water hanging out with Mr. Barbercorn.